again, because I think he's a decent puck mover, and I don't think he hurts you as much as Jack Johnson might. Now, he might not give you that much at all, really, on the positive side either, but I think he's a perfectly decent player as well, and for many fewer dollars than what you have committed to Johnson. So there is a decision coming up, and maybe Riikola steps to the forefront. He has played better recently, and so that does present a dilemma at some point here once Schultz does return to the lineup from the long-term injured reserve. So there is a spot, there is a decision coming down the line here, and I'm not sure they're going to actually bench Johnson, but maybe it speaks more to the fact that they don't have that much depth in their organization on defense, that they haven't benched him. I wouldn't necessarily say that the Penguins definitely think he's great. I don't think they do, but I also think they're trying to find every way to make this work, especially in season number 1 of this deal.
Yeah, just keep bringing him out there and hope it gets better, I guess. But you mentioned that the game has changed so much and it's more of a speed game. Has that also affected Malkin? Because before he got hurt, he wasn't doing so great. Is he having trouble adjusting to this new game?
It could be, yeah. I've never thought he was a slow player necessarily, but his game was never based on speed. He's a strong skater, but he could always use his reach. He's not really a power forward type. He was, at his best, a hybrid type of a player. He had the high-end hands and a really good shot, maybe an underrated shot, I think, to this day. But also, he used every inch of his frame to protect the puck and work down low, and it's just tougher these days. The standard has risen, and I give Sidney Crosby every kudo in the book, because it appears he has found a way to keep up, and maybe because his game was always built around the work below the face-off dots. And yeah, he was kind of a rush player more when he came into the league, but he has long adjusted to that, and he has long found his groove and realizing that that's where he can do his best work. And I think Sid's probably having arguably his best season out of the last 3 or 4 at age 30 plus now. So, but I never really worried that much about Crosby. Maybe it's a conditioning thing with Malkin. Maybe he needs to change the workout plan in the offseason. We've seen him do that before in the past and have it pay off in big ways. So perhaps it's time for another adjustment here. Maybe he needs to change his diet as he gets into his early 30s. It's always a game of adjustments, and whether you're 23 or 33. And with Malkin heading toward the latter of those 2 ages, then I think he has to look at this season, and maybe he's doing it right now. Maybe this is a chance for him to say, well, what can I do differently? How can I change my game, at least right now? Because he's not going to get any faster during the season. He's not going to be able to make any meaningful physiological changes. But until then, until he gets that chance to go back in the lab in the offseason, maybe there is an opportunity here to watch some video and to figure out, well, there's a couple of things that I can do differently, and maybe even just stepping away from the ice, because as he admitted to a couple of different reporters, I know I saw Josh Yohe write about this when the Penguins were out west, Malkin feels like his confidence level's down. So if you get the chance to perhaps step away for an extended stretch, I know he'd rather not have the hand injury be bothering him, but at the same time, it can also create a clean slate here going into the final third of the regular season.
Isn't it crazy that we're talking about the end of Crosby and Malkin's careers? And I think they're far away from that, but Malkin's contract is up in, I think, 2021, 2022 season, and that's only a few years from now. So I see Crosby playing until he's like 40, but do you see Malkin sticking around after his contract? I have a feeling he's going to go back to Russia.
Well, he's a mysterious guy, and part of it is just the language barrier. Yes, he speaks fine English for interviews and for all of us to enjoy. Sometimes the slight slips of the tongue and the mangling of the language at times, and he gets his point across, though, even amidst all that. But at the same time, there's always going to be that little bit of disconnect because it's not his native tongue. And also, he hasn't been very open with anyone in the media in a long form. I know that Rob Rossi's working on the autobiography, but I also know that Malkin has kind of pulled back from that at times in talking to Rob, and it hasn't been the easiest project, I'll put it that way. So he has been somewhat closeted in his emotions and his feelings there, and perhaps he has so much pride that he doesn't want to play like this for a long term. Maybe he can't accept a diminished level of production, and we're not necessarily at that point now where it's permanent. I don't know. Like I said, I think he can make some adjustments. I think he's a gifted enough athlete, obviously, where a small adjustment might lead to a big change. But I would not be surprised to see the scenario that you just referenced play out, and that he would go back to the KHL and maybe play in his hometown, get back to Magnitogorsk, and perhaps round out his career there, like we've seen some other prominent European players like Pavel Datsyuk in recent seasons. So that's always an option. And you bring up the contract. I still think he's going to sign one more extension here with the Penguins, but who knows how long it is. Maybe it's just a 3-year extension to his current deal, and that would take him into his mid to late 30s, and then he can make that decision when he gets to it. But I've always felt like Crosby's definitely a Penguin for life, definitely going to play only for the Penguins when it comes to pro hockey. But yeah, there's always some wiggle room with Malkin just because of the type of personality he is, and the fact that even though he's been a transcendent player, no doubt, he's always going to be at least a half step behind Sid when it comes to legacy with the Penguins. That's just the way it is. It's anyone's fate who's going to play with number 87, I suppose.
Yeah, he'll always be second fiddle to Crosby, and that's probably why he doesn't get as much recognition throughout the league, because I'm sure everybody thinks, oh well, he's on a team with Crosby. Crosby gets the best matchup. Crosby, he has the benefit of getting of benefiting from the other team's second best line or whatever. So that's probably just how it's going to be. Is what was it, that top 100 thing that he got left out of that? Like,
oh yeah, that's a joke. Obviously, we all know that. Yeah, he's easily top 30 all time, maybe top 20. Yeah, he's probably top 20. Come to think of it, in NHL history, and maybe even a little bit higher than that. So I suppose that's emblematic of his fate in the NHL. If he's playing for a different team, Joe, I think that no doubt he makes the top 100, but he's always been in the shadow of Crosby, and sometimes he likes that. He has often said that he doesn't mind letting Sid handle the heavy lifting of leadership, or maybe speaking more in a public setting and being the team spokesman, and that's fine. That's totally his prerogative, but it has led to some situations where he's been left playing second fiddle when perhaps he should be right there next to Crosby on lead guitar, or whatever reference you want to make there.
Yeah. You mentioned Scott Stevens a few minutes ago, and I saw you had a tweet yesterday that you want to get footage from the 1999, 2000, 2001 Penguins postseasons. Well, why do you want that?
Well, those are simple explanation. Those are my formative years as a fan, and I was, 15, 16, and 17 for those playoff runs. So that's like right in the sweet spot when you're really falling in love with sports. At least that's when I fell in love with sports, and it means the world to you. And nothing's more important basically at that time. So part of it's that, but part of it, I feel like that era of Penguins hockey is underappreciated. And I don't know. Well, I know why it is, because it came between the Stanley Cup eras. But even in the early years of the Crosby Malkin era, I still felt like the late '90s Penguins, early 2000s Penguins were definitely underrated by the fan base because they just didn't stack up. They didn't win a cup like the early '90s Penguins did, and yeah, that's understandable. But here we saw an entertaining team, a team that played kind of like a counterattack, counterpunch type hockey. They didn't get a lot of shots on goal. They played a very European style. So they held on to the puck. They had puck possession in the strictest sense, but they did not have a modern offense that's trying to throw 30, 40 shots at the net. So they would hold on, wait, try to find the perfect play. You had guys like Yager and Straka and Lang and German Titov. I was watching some of those highlights the other day. So Yuri Slager was always a favorite of mine on the blue line too. And those playoff runs in '99 when they upset the Devils, the top-seeded Devils in the first round, in 2000 when they got past the Capitals, Marty Straka scoring the breakaway goal, stealing the puck from Sergei Gonchar. That's a very memorable moment. And then 2001, maybe the most memorable playoff run between Stanley Cups, the year that Lemieux came back and the year that they went to the conference final. Got smoked by the Devils, but their first time back in the conference final in a few years. And that was my first time as a Penguins fan experiencing a deep playoff run. And, of course, the second coming of 66, it blew you away. And I don't see a lot of those clips available on YouTube, or I don't see a lot of those, full games available. The Penguins a couple of times have put out DVD sets, and maybe that's passé now because everyone's got streaming. But I felt like that era didn't get its proper due there. They only had one game from that era in the DVD collections. The Penguins did. So it's kind of like part nostalgia and part, hey, this was a pretty good team. This is a fun team to watch, highly skilled, and in a lot of ways defined or helped define how hockey was changing going into the 21st century.
Yeah, the Penguins were so lucky. The early 90s, it was, they dominated with, those great early 90s teams, and then they kind of fell apart, and then Lemieux retired, and it was all Yager for the later part of the 90s, and then Mario coming back. That season was crazy. I was actually at that game where Lemieux came back.
Oh, wow. Lucky
it was just, it was total luck because I for Christmas I was like, well, I'll get Penguin tickets for right around the game after Christmas. I'll go get them. So I bought tickets, and then he announced he was coming back that game. I'm like, oh my God, that was amazing. But yeah, that was a good team. And I remember that the series against Buffalo, they won. Was it in overtime of Game 7?
The last 3 games of that series went to overtime. Stu Barnes won Game 5 for Buffalo up in Buffalo. And then the Penguins had a rally in Game 6 at home to tie it up and then win it. And then Game 7, Darius Kasparaitis scores in overtime after Robert Lang ties it up. So, yeah, I have a pretty good memory for these years, too. They've stuck with me. And I forgot to mention Alexei Kovalev. My goodness, he's probably the most talented player on the ice, even counting Yager, if you just talk about pure skill. So it was a very fun era. And even though I didn't grow up with the early 90s Penguins like a lot of my slightly older friends did, I don't feel like I was cheated at all, because that was the era that helped me fall in love with hockey and skilled hockey, Penguin-style hockey. It really defined the brand for me in that way.
It is funny that the things that when we first, when we're a certain age or when we first start following hockey, that we hold in such high regard. But yeah, and then I was able to go to the Mario return game, and I think maybe I went to another playoff game besides that. But then I decided to splurge because they got to the Eastern Conference Finals and catch a game against the Devils. And I thought I would take my dad. It would be such a wonderful experience because my dad was a pretty big hockey fan at the time. And they got destroyed by New Jersey. And my dad stopped becoming a hockey fan because he was so angry that they got destroyed by the Devils. Those like great Devils teams with Scott Stevens, and I mean they were a juggernaut.
Yeah, Sikora, Eliash, Arnott. Yeah, they were pretty great that year. Scott Gomez.
Yeah, and he reminds me, he's like, I don't like hockey anymore because of you. Like, oh gee, thanks, Dad.
Well, that's harsh. I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah, I feel like he deserves a verbal spanking for that one.
Seriously, I mean, I don't feel. Oh yeah, and they weren't cheap. those tickets weren't cheap either, but oh well. But yeah, Kovalev, Straka, Lang, those are